Hey guys, it's Elena, and today I want to show you how I made this piece in Procreate on my iPad, and it's inspired by Malachite. So it's a bit abstract, but that's the general concept. So I started out with a document that was 16 by 20 inches and this Malachite palette, which is available for free for my subscribers. You can see the link for that down below. I made a new layer and filled it with a dark color, and then I put that layer instead of the background layer because I'll show you why in just a minute. So using my amazing alcohol ink brush set, which is also available for purchase in the link down below, I started out using color changing number 4, and I used a green and a blue because you can use your primary and secondary colors with this brush using the tilt function. So I just started out making a few blobs with this brush onto the screen and sometimes tilting the pen so that the secondary color would come out. So now I'm switching to my XL blended stroke brush in a bright green color, and I'm going to start making some circles on the screen. And if you're familiar with Malachite, there are lines and there are circles in the general pattern of the gemstone. So I wanted to make some sort of stripy circles in the middle that I will continue putting different colors on. I'm sort of clustering the circles together so that there are certain areas of circles and they're close to these blobs that I already made. Okay, so now I chose a lighter color and I'm just going to continue using this same brush, the XL blended stroke, and adding circles on top of the ones I already made, slightly smaller. And I'm just going to keep on doing this with different colors, alternating dark colors and light colors, so that there are rings, kind of like tree rings, inside of these circles. This brush tends to have sort of an edge around it and be lighter in the middle when you're, especially if you're using it in a circular motion like this. So at this point I decided that there were not enough circles and I wanted to do a few more, so it was more like circle clusters. So I just went ahead with more colors, more circles in the same pattern. So now I've selected the blended brush stroke brush, and very carefully and slowly I'm making some curvy lines around these blobs that I had originally drawn, and I'm doing this all on the same layer because this brush will sort of drag what's on that layer around with it. You just have to sort of be careful around these circles so that you don't just completely draw over them because they will get erased. But I'm just making some abstract squiggly lines in different colors. So it's a similar concept to the circles that I just did, but this time it's lines in different colors, varying dark colors, light colors. And you can get really abstract with this. It's not an exact science, and it's really about what comes intuitively to you. And I've done 2 other pieces with this concept, and if you've seen my Instagram feed, there were 2 other ones that I had posted and asked for opinions, and it was almost completely split down the middle, and both of them were completely different from this one, and they were all inspired by Malachite. So you know, don't think that it has to look just like what I'm doing. It will look different for you, and that's okay. It's more about just having fun with the process and just being intuitive with it. So with some of these lines, I'm leaving some space in between. Some of them I'm just going right over top of the last line, but some of them I'm leaving a little bit of the dark blue peeking through. And later on in the process, I'm going to merge the dark blue background and the layer that I'm drawing on. And that's because when I'm starting to use a little bit of liquefy effects, which I will do, I'm going to want to liquefy everything all together. So I'll show you more about how that works later, but for now, just keep in mind that some of the blue, we want that showing through. Sometimes the blended brushstroke brush is a bit difficult for some people if you're not used to working with pressure in Procreate. And if you find it really difficult to use this brush, you can use the static brushstroke instead. A lot of people find that one easier. The difference between them is just that they don't, the static brushstroke does not blend like this one does, but you can still do a very similar concept. And if you don't have my brushes at all, you can do something similar with the air brushes in Procreate. It's not going to look quite like this, but you can experiment with those, or you can experiment with some other brushes, whatever brushes you have, or some of the default brushes. It's not completely necessary to have my brushes, though of course it helps. But you can experiment with this concept. This is just inspiration for you to just take it and run with it. So now I switched back to the color changing number 4 brush, and that's because there are a couple of these areas that are really small and they're difficult to put stripes in, so I just added a little bit more of the color changing brush texture here instead. So then I went and I chose the XL blended stroke again, and I put in just a few more circles because it still felt a little bit bare, like these blobs in the middle were just too big and I needed a few more little circles there. So I just followed the same pattern that I did at the beginning with the circles, adding more and more colors, alternating between dark and light. Okay, so at this point I decided to go into my layers palette and duplicate this layer that I'm drawing on to see if I could make the whole thing pop just a bit more. And that was a bit too bright, so I took the opacity of the duplicate layer down to about 30%. And when you are merging layers like I'm about to do, it's important to always have a copy of the original. So I went ahead and duplicated that original again and turned it off. So now the 30% layer, I use merge down to merge it with the one below and then merge that down onto the dark blue background. So now it's all on the same layer, the dark blue background and the original drawing, and I still have a copy of the other one just in case I really hate what I did with this. So going to adjustments, I chose Liquify, and it's already actually on the one that I want called Edge. If you see, there's push and twirl and all of that. Edge is the one you want, and momentum about 25%, pressure 50, and size 44. And this is something that you can experiment with in your own piece. But I'm going to take my pen and just draw along the lines. First off, I'm doing this on the lines where you can sort of see where the brushstroke ends, and it sort of zips the whole thing up a little bit tighter so that you can't really see the ends of the brush strokes. And I'm just going to go ahead and do this along all of these areas where there's some brush stroke showing. And I actually made it really small for this one here. I'm just kind of experimenting with the size until it works. So now it's at about 22%. And for these brushes, you don't have to use Liquify. It's never necessary. I just wanted to go ahead and use it in this piece because I feel like it's possible to make some really interesting Malachite-ish patterns using the Liquify brush, and I haven't really used it for any of my tutorials so far, so that's what I'm doing for today's tutorial. But you could just leave it like this if you don't want to mess around with Liquify. So anywhere where we've got this blue background peeking through, I'm kind of zipping the whole thing up and just making these lines a bit more irregular. And along all of these circles, I wanted to add some effects that make the circles less circular, because if you look at a piece of malachite, you'll see that the circles are not perfect circles. Usually it looks like it's been warped. So I'm doing that along all of these, just sort of zipping up the parts where the background shows so that they all look a little bit warped onto each other. If it starts to look really pointy on the circle, then you can just go with the pen in the other direction. Anywhere where you go back and forth on a line, it will just start to take everything and fold it in on that spot. Okay, so at this point I was done with the Liquify effects, and I decided to add some splatters. So I went and I chose my color splatter brush, and I chose, I'm on my sort of olive green color, and I'm going to add some dark splatters around close to where the circles are. And I'm going to, with the same brush, do some light splatters as well. I wanted to add a little bit of gold glitter on top of this. Not a whole lot, but a bit so as not to detract from the rest. So I went ahead and I chose my metallics palette and one of the golds from that, and my metallic ink liner brush, and I'm just going to add a little bit of this glitter along some of these lines. Anyway, I hope that you have enjoyed this demo, and I hope that it gives you some kind of inspiration. And I would love to see what you come up with. If you are sharing on social media, you don't have to, but I always enjoy getting tagged or mentioned, and so that I can see what you've made and share on my platform as well. I always love to do that. And if you have any questions, I'm happy to answer. I'm always here. You can send me a message or you can leave me a comment. And I will be sending a lot more tutorials your way in 2021, so watch out for those. Thanks again.